Yeah, it's been about a year or so since I've bought all these premium accounts on StreamYard as well. I've had some good streams. We've been able to chat about the Olympics. We've been able to chat about T20 Cricket World Cups, Women's World Cups, Champions Trophy, etc. But just not been frequent enough, and that's a thing which a lot of friends have criticized me for. Which is why I thought I'll get a guest today who is actually quite frequent with his posting, and it's good posting as well. In fact, just before coming on live, we were chatting about the fact that he had reached out some years ago and had given a little bit of a sort of an indication of what he wanted to do. And it's my great pleasure to have on board Debjit Lahiri, who runs the page Forgotten Cricket Memories. So it's a very interesting page. If you haven't checked it out yet, make sure that you do subscribe to him because he puts up a lot of interesting stories. If I may say so, sometimes Devjit, they are not so much forgotten as unknown cricket stories because there are a lot of stories out there, memories rather, which many people perhaps haven't even been very familiar with. So welcome first of all to the podcast, and hope we have a nice freewheeling chat because I assume, like me, you're a cricket nut as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the podcast, and looking forward to have a great cricket discussion. Yeah.
So, tell a bit about yourself. Like, where are you from? Where are you based now? What is it that you do? And also, I mean, circling around to how the passion for cricket got instigated in a way.
Sure. I'm born and brought up in Kolkata.
Hmm.
However, have like moved around cities in India for my full time job in consulting. Apart from my work, like my full time job, I've always been a very passionate sports fan. And growing up in the 90s in India, cricket was something that automatically came into the picture. And my grandfather was a big cricket fan. So growing up, I had a lot of memories with him, like with him watching cricket late into the night, and like sit with him and watch such games. And that's how the passion for cricket kind of built in. And I do remember like my grandfather would do a lot of storytelling while certain matches would go on. He would tell about the times he has watched a match, and more than like the cricketing facts itself, what was interesting is him sharing about what he was doing during that match, how the neighborhood came together to watch a particular match. So all those kind of anecdotes or like small snippets sort of built into my passion for cricket and storytelling. And uh, while in I sort of started writing about sports in different platforms from around 2010. I briefly wrote about football as well, and then in 2020 I kind of wrote a very casual Facebook post about one of my memories about Douglas Marillier and his like scoop shot. And that kind of really picked up and got a lot of traction. And I realized that nostalgia is something that not only I relate, a lot of other people also relate. And especially with cricket, because cricket was a very important part of the formative years of many Indians in the 90s. Uh, so that's how I got the idea about cricket storytelling, and and that's how I started this Forgotten Cricket Memories page on Instagram to share about my experiences.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I can relate to so much of that because even my late grandfather, he was also a major cricket fan. And the interesting part was that he was also into teaching. I mean, he himself had been I think he had been a scientific officer with the government of India, and he knew he knew all subjects and everything. So a lot of neighborhood kids would also come down and take tuitions from him. He passed away when I was 14, but up till that point, like, whenever there was a need for any studies at home, he'd be the one who'd take charge and say that, no, you come, you sit with me, I'll teach you the fundamentals. But he would also always make an exception for cricket. So he would fight with the other members of the house that, no, if there's a cricket match, then we are first watching the cricket, then we are, attending to the studies. So it's so sweet to have, a similar experience there. And even he, obviously, he worked and lived in places like Kanpur and Delhi. That's where my dad also grew up. So, in fact, in the month to come, I'm slated to do the UP Cricket League for UPCA. And
Okay.
in between, there was a rumor that they were considering two venues, not just Lucknow, but also Kanpur. So my father was keen on actually visiting his childhood home in Kanpur. I have actually, covered cricket in Kanpur and gone to the places where my father and his siblings grew up. But yeah, I mean, obviously he tells stories of Green Park, of having watched, like, guys like Ted Dexter and Richie Benu and everybody, Bill Laurie's Australians in Kotla and everything. So yeah, I think it's a very cultural thing in India. The
Mhm.
cricket, fandom is passed down through generations, very similar to how football, I guess, operates in Britain.
Right.
So it's good that you decided to do something about it, but what was the spark which made you kind of make it a more serialized version? Like, where did you get that kind of inspiration from?
I think right from the start, when I got good traction on the first post, I kind of thought of making it a series where I would narrate stories of my experiences of watching cricket. So if you like go back on my feed and like look at some of the initial stories, those were all from the 90s and early 2000s. The
Hmm.
stories about 2003 World Cup, 2002 Champions Trophy. So all those kind of sort of got a lot of traction, and I kept going at it. Then at one point my memories would sort of exhaust, so now I have to like do research about past, even more, go a little back. So then once you start getting a little bit of a good feedback from the audience, you try to sort of make it extend it a bit more further. So i I started researching about older events in cricket. I look at older articles, old anecdotes from different books, and a lot of the stories are there somewhere, but it's not really pieced together to form a story in a place like Instagram where there is a lot of eyeballs. So my job is to sort of string together these pieces and make it an engaging storyline and present it for like the fast-paced Instagram audience so that it reaches to the wider audience. So that is how I kind of got the motivation and just kept going after that.
That's very good. Do you remember the first cricket match that you saw actively, either at the stadium or on TV? Any first cricket memories?
Yeah, so I think what my earliest cricket memories are around I think 97, where I think the Sahara Cup in Canada, and even I remember bits of the Independence Cup as well, where Kanitkar had hit
Hmm.
the last over boundary. I think I was very young at the time, I'm 5 years old or something. Then I remember the Sharjah Desert Storm innings pretty vividly. So by then I had like a fairly decent understanding of cricket to follow it ball by ball. Uh, and then obviously from the 99 World Cup onwards, I think I remember most of the matches from there on. And uh, the cricket passion like really picked up around the early 2000s, especially during sort of Ganguly's tenure as captain. So and that was a period when Indian cricket was also going through a resurgence. So it was a good time to follow the game as a fan, like when cricket is kind of coming up from 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 the scratch or something like that. Come making a sort of a comeback in the country. So yeah, so
So,
then those were the earliest memories. And from a stadium point of view, I actually went to a stadium pretty late in my life. I think the first stadium match that I watched was the 2012 IPL match between KKR and Pune in Eden Gardens, where Ganguly came back as the captain for Pune, and most of Eden Gardens was dressed as Pune Warriors fans. So I think
oh,
that
is it? Because that's an interesting one. Because that season I was actually producing the show for Sony, and I had
oh,
this brainwave of a story that let's do a, like, vox pop, what you call a vox pop. So go around Kolkata asking people that who are you going to be supporting. But most people were like, actually KKR supporters. They said, yeah,
oh,
fine, we love our Dada, but we are definitely going to root for KKR. So it's interesting to hear a counterpoint that there were some people in there who were actually rooting for Pune Warriors.
yeah, I think especially the block that I was sitting in I think block B, there were a lot of Pune fans, and that was a time actually when KKR had still not won the title. So they won the
Yes,
title
yes.
in
They won it
2012.
that year itself. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's when like the loyalty towards Gambhir and his team kind of really built up after
yeah.
that. So there was this period in between where there was I think a little bit divide in the loyalties about who they would go for. Yeah.
So, as a fan, were you always more following sport and watching sport, or were you also into playing? Did you also harbor ambitions of maybe playing for India someday? Did you have that as well?
Not really. I mean, I did. So my because I was very passionate about sport at a very early age. My uncle took me to a very like a close by academy at the time.
Hmm.
However, I was like very young, and my parents also did not want to like put the pressure of like expectation of representing in a certain level at the time, and because that never happened, even it did not come from inside of me that I have to like reach a certain level. I played for fun and kind of uh, uh, played a little
Yeah,
bit of.
because I'm just trying to sort of like, merge the timeline. So when you would
Yeah,
have been, into your early, whatever, like, pre-teens or something, by then Bengal actually had a decent presence in Indian cricket, if you think about it.
yeah,
You had
yeah,
Ganguly, you had somebody like a Saba Karim who had played for Bengal as well. You
yeah,
had Devang Gandhi. So you
yeah.
had a few inspirations to look up to. Rohan Gavaskar also went on to play for
Right,
India. So
right.
it wasn't as bad as I happen to be maybe about 10 years younger than you or older than you.
Mhm.
And of course, I came from Delhi, which had a much more competitive circuit in that sense. But yeah,
Mhm.
as Bengali cricketers, there were very few inspirations at that point of time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I don't know. I think it's just that my whenever so my parents kind of downplayed the expectation at a very early age because they did not want me to sort of get hurt into like in a pursuit
Yeah,
of
it's a
getting.
very Indian middle class thing to
Yeah,
do.
yeah, and hence I think even I thought that like representing a state or a country is a very far fetched dream, and uh,
Hmm.
by the time I grew up, I was like growing up the school classes. I kind of realized that I think the regular mainstream career would be the right way for me, and I soon left the academy. I obviously played cricket with friends very casually and in an informal setup to like sort of have fun. Even played a bit in college as well, but never in a formal setup after that.
So, one thing which you mentioned obviously is that since you've started this page, you had to do a lot more research, obviously, to sort of
Mhm.
turn the clock back and go into the past. How challenging is it, and how is it that you do it? I mean, is there a procedure to it? Is it something that you've always enjoyed, or is it something that you've become more conscious of since you started this page to, read up more on history to find those anecdotes?
Yeah, I do like reading about history. History is something that I've always been, even back in school, I did enjoy reading about history. It gives those up sort of some very interesting anecdotes and insights. And I enjoy sort of drawing insights from certain pattern of events and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it sort of came very naturally to me, and the storytelling part of things came from I think again something a skill that I kind of built in school because I was I was pretty good in essay writing at the time. Like there was a lot of focus on essays, and although those were not sports essays, but I was good at it, and that kind of translated into like writing about cricket. And before I started this page, I actually while I was in college, I worked part time as a football journalist for various like media houses at the time. So writing art sports article that also gave me a little bit of experience about doing that. So I used to write about Indian football and cricket, European football at the time. So that also helped like build my sort of
I'm
skills.
guessing this would have been pre-ISL. This was more I League days, I guess.
Yes, this was around 2010 to 13 that period. I think just before ISL actually. So yeah, I remember going to a few I League games as well. I had a media card at the time. But, yeah, it was good. I think it was a good
So,
experience.
are you East Bengal or are you Mohan Bagan?
So I'm a Mohun Bagan fan. So,
Okay.
uh,
And I mean, have you always been that, or is it more of a sort of a family thing?
yeah, so I think my like my paternal side of family is not much invested into football, but from my maternal side, they are very much into Mohan Bagan. Uh, so one of my ancestors, Gauna Shankar Bhattacharya, who was a very legendary Mohan Bagan player back in the days. So
Okay.
my grandfather from the maternal side, everyone were very passionate about Mohan Bagan. So that's how I kind of got that thing. And then when I went to school, I think a lot of my friends were Mohun Bagan supporters as well during high school. So that's how so I started following Mohun Bagan. And I
Yeah,
also
yeah. For any of those who joined our podcast, I can tell you, like, anecdotal about the passion for Mohan Bagan in East Bengal with two little anecdotes. So one was when I used to do commentary for I League. I remember there used to be one on my paternal side, one sort of cousin of my father's and his father, who was my, father's grand uncle, or rather uncle. So this grand uncle and his son, they were very strong Mohan Bagan supporters, and they lived in an area which was also very strong Mohan Bagan support. So I've actually seen them, like, forego their dinner on days when Mohan Bagan have lost. Not even to East Bengal, even if they've lost to a Salgaonkar or something, they've, like,
Yeah.
refused to eat. And the second story is around. This may have been when you were quite young, but if you remember, there was a derby to which Seb Blatter had come in 2007. There
Yeah,
was
I
an I
think
League derby. Yeah,
this is a two
I think it
one.
was in April. Yeah, April 2007. Yes, Mohun Bagan won it 2-1. I mean, East
Yes.
Bengal were leading 1-0 at halftime. So my one of my cousins who actually lives in Bangalore now, he
Mhm.
was in Calcutta at the time, and I told him that, yeah, come over, just, like, sit beside me. We'll be in the open in the commentary box, positioned between two stands. So there were East Bengal fans to the left and Mohun Bagan fans to the right. So at halftime, obviously the East Bengal fans were baying, the Mohun Bagan supporters, 1-0, and all kinds of, like, abuses flying around. And then, yeah, at full time, it was more than just abuses flying around. Like, there were things being thrown and, like, bottles coming. And my cousin was getting very fretted that, what if this comes and hits us? I told him, relax. It's much worse in some stadiums in where I have done things like people have thrown chairs, they've thrown stones. So this won't hurt. Like, even if a bottle comes, just, like, pick it up, start drinking water. It's as simple as that. So yeah, that's quite a crazy thing. So one more, I mean, I completely agree with you, and this is a very interesting part. Even as the caption is saying, like, you call yourself a cricket storyteller, and I've always believed this. As one of my jobs, I also work with this Bangalore startup in training certain commentators, and I tell them that essentially all journalism is also storytelling. But yeah,
Mm.
it's faithful storytelling. You have to stay true to the facts. You can't just, like,
Yeah.
spin. I think that's a concern that a lot of, if you see a lot of broadcasts nowadays, particularly in India, there's definite spin on it. There's a definite attempt to, like, push certain figures and make them larger than life. I don't think that's necessary, but I can see where, channels and networks are coming from, because
Yeah.
India largely tends to be a very celebrity
Mm.
sort of obsessed nation. But yes, I mean, eventually everything is storytelling, whether you're writing a story, whether you're telling a story, whether you're talking to somebody, whether you're actually commentating. You have to make it engaging. You have to get people in, and you have to make people understand the importance of what we're talking about. So
Yeah.
there I completely, like, endorse the whole concept of cricket storytelling. And one more thing which I will say is, and I'm sure you're aware of this, so if you can, like, my humble request is, get as many stories from Indian cricket out there, because
Yeah.
if you notice, like, there's a lot of Western, literature in cricket. What we really lack is Indian stories, because there are so many fascinating Indian stories. I mean, I'm sure you'd agree with that, right?
Yes, that's definitely. I think if you look back at history, how cricket has sort of evolved from the colonial days to the days of like 60s, 70s when there was like a sort of a resurgence. Then again, uh, 83 World Cup, how suddenly like one of the greatest upsets in world sports, if not like
Hmm.
not just in cricket but world sports, and then the entire commercialization period of cricket. So there's been a huge evolution of how the sport has kind of picked up, and I was kind of like it's very interesting. For example, so I have just to give you the context to the audience. I moved to US about a year back, and I was doing a little bit of research on US cricket history as well. And it was fascinating to find how the Indian demographic reacted to a colonial sport compared to how US perceived it. So, like in the 1850s in US, cricket was a very fairly popular sport, if not one of the popular sport. But it was always kind of seen as a British import, so it was kind of looked
Hmm.
down upon. Whereas sports in India, when certain sports, sort of even football or cricket, those were kind of seen as symbols of places where the Indian teams could kind of defeat their colonial masters, and it could be a sense of sort of nationalism, and they kind of picked it up even more and sort of get better than the English on it. So there were like different motivators to a same source of sports at two different geographical locations. So one totally discarded it because it seemed like a foreign import, while other wanted to like embrace it and be better at it, so that that could be sort of a symbol of resistance and nationalism. So it's interesting how like the behavioral traits play and different other geopolitical factors play into the evolution of sport in a particular country. So yeah, I think it's very interesting. There's so many things that has happened in India, and I hope to sort of cover all these stories as I go along.
It's a very interesting point you make. So just a follow up on that, since you have been in the US not for a long time, but substantial enough to know, how has the buzz been lately about cricket? Because obviously the MLC is kind of making international waves.
Yeah.
It's covered extensively here in India in the press. So I'm assuming that it's also reasonably big right now in the US. And there's been a World Cup where the US team did pretty well just a year ago.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the interest is driven by obviously the immigrant population here, which is all which is a sizable population. So,
Hmm.
so there is interest about the game, and uh, when I go to my office, there are a lot of like Indian folks or people from the subcontinent who actually follow a lot of these games. And outside these formal leagues, there are a lot of private leagues that happen in each city. For example, I stay in Milwaukee, which is a relatively smaller city, but there is like a Milwaukee Premier League happening with about like 6, 7 different teams. So they have players to sort of play the game and everything. But for the local crowd, it is still probably not picked up that much. Uh, because of all these recent events, I think they are now aware of a game called cricket. Because although it was like popular back in the days, I think in between it totally got lost from the American like subconsciousness. But now they're aware that there is a game called cricket and it is being played, and they might see a passing coverage on a television ad or something like that. But I think still it will only I think pick up when cricket sort of gets introduced to like US schools and colleges where the formal uh, sport is usually adopted by the younger kids. So that is how they can probably build a sustainable pipeline of talent and sustainable interest for the game. And it may not ever be one of the top sports in US, but I think it has the potential to the national at least it has the potential to create a talent pipeline that would be good enough to be a competitive white ball team. So I think that should be like the next goal for US to like regularly participate in the World Cups and have a team that could like challenge the big teams in T20 and other formats there, and and get as much like local involvement as possible. So even the Olympics coming in 2028 LA
Yeah.
Olympics, so that could also like help get a little bit more investment and focus into cricket as the Olympic sport.
Yeah, I always muse about the fact, cricket is a very unique game in that there are obviously three formats, maybe multiple formats will come up soon as well, which will be accepted across international levels. And it's such a strange sport because it's really an individual sport within a team sport. Like at any one point of time, it's one bowler bowling to one batter, and then whatever, like, there's only one fielder who can usually influence the outcome of that. So it's a very distinct sport, and I can assume, like, or I can understand why newer cultures find it a little difficult to kind of understand and wrap their head around this whole sport. Have you had a hit about as yet in US? Because I know a lot of friends of mine, a lot of like family, they do sometimes get down and play cricket, with their other fellow sort of uh, desi
Uh,
friends or cricket loving friends.
No, no, I have not yet like played a game here, but I know I live in a very small suburb, but even here they
Hmm.
have like a specialized cricket ground where a lot of Indians come and play. So it's just the size of the subcontinent population is so high that even like immigrant populations can have like a small league in place and to sort of play and have keep the presence of the game some in some form or the other. So yeah, I'm looking forward to maybe we be part of those games soon, but I've not yet played yet.
So you mentioned on that on your maternal side there was one sort of ancestor of yours who was a legendary footballer. Have you also known some cricketers? I mean, who are your favorite cricketers overall? Just first from a cricket perspective, and any meetups with famous cricketers, any incidents of having come across them at any place.
Uh, yeah, so I think so. Growing up, my favorite cricketers were obviously Sachin and Saurav were like very big in the early late 90s and early 2000s, and even now they are like big percents. But seeing them in my formative years, they were one of my favorite players, and especially their legendary opening partnership. So that was something. There was not a lot of things in which the Indian team were like number one at the time, like in the late 90s, but I think the opening pair was something that was probably at par at being like one of the world's best. So that was something that I always treasured and some of the like, greatest partnerships. So though both of them were like one of my favorite players. Then little later on, Yuvraj Singh again, very classy left-hander, one of my favorite players. Zahir Khan, again, a very crucial cog of that 2003 batch of players. So I think these were some of my favorite players sort of growing up. Um, Other than, yeah, I think I really admired Ricky Ponting as well, although he
Hmm.
was not too good to us whenever he played against India. But I always considered him as a very formidable challenge whenever India used to face that invincible Aussie side over the years. So
Did you have a second team? Because all of us who grew up in the 80s, our second team was always West Indies. What about you?
no, I don't think I ever had a because by the time I
And
started
yeah,
watching football, sorry, you were saying something.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was saying I think because there were the cricket, the frequency of cricket really picked up, and there was always an Indian game on every few months by the early 2000s. So never really got a chance to sort of see support a new other team in a neutral setup. So always there would be something of Indian interest here or there. So yeah, then I think that probably did not happen much. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
did in terms of I always like the underdog stories. For example, the uh, Kenya
Hmm.
story during the 2003 World Cup. I always like the Zimbabwean teams. Always a very difficult team in the early 2000s. So I like certain teams, but never really supported them as such.
Yeah, in fact, I had the pleasure of commentating on a couple of games of Kenya in the run up to the 2014 T20 World Cup. There were some qualifiers going on in UAE, and I was doing some of those matches. And yeah, I mean, good fun to watch teams like Netherlands, Kenya,
Mhm.
Denmark. Denmark had a left-hander who was a unique case because I'd never seen, like, in my entire life, a left-hander who just can't hit on the offside. So he was the captain of the Denmark team, and the easiest thing to do was just run up and bowl outside his off stump because he was either going to miss or play it straight to a fielder. So I was just thinking that Saurav Ganguly, if he were watching, he would have, like, eaten his hat or something. So what I was saying in the middle is that because I've been in journalism, in commentary, in broadcast for about like 20 plus years now, 22 years. So in a sense, I always joke with my friends that I don't have a fan inside me. So when I speak as objectively as possible. But even so, I get a lot of, like, predictions right. Like just on day 4 of this test which went by, I had written and I think I'd addressed it to W.V. Raman and Irfan Pathan, and Raman had actually replied. I'd said that I see, England collapsing and getting out for something like 177, and it's a great opportunity for India. And I honestly, like, even there's a school WhatsApp group where we have a few school friends and we talk a lot about cricket. And even there, I was mentioning the previous day on day 3 that India shouldn't, like, bother with batting for those last 3, like, wickets, because the Indian tail anyway whittles away. So you're better off actually declaring, even if you're behind, put the pressure back on England, because you have about a good 45 to 30-minute window. Have a bowl at them, bowl 8 overs, get a couple of wickets, get 3 wickets if possible, and put them severely under pressure. As it turned out, like, it went down to that 1 over and Zach Crawley, all that play acting. So
Yeah,
I keep saying that, yeah, I keep my India bias aside. And of course, I've, like, commentated over moments where
mhm.
India have won, both the T20 World Cup as well as the Champions Trophy recently.
Yeah,
And I've tried never to, like, let my India bias come in. If anything, I think, that infamous episode involving Harsha Bhogle and Amitabh Bachchan and MS Dhoni. I think I'm completely on Harsha's side there, that as a broadcaster, you have to be as objective. Like, you have to consider that there are fans watching for the other team as well. So, like
yeah,
I was saying that earlier, sometimes, like, in India, particularly in India, broadcasts become very one sided
yeah,
because they completely forget that the other team has also come to win. So it just creates unrealistic expectations for, like, India fans and supporters as well. And you're still little younger as a fan, so you have grown up with some, overseas test wins and everything. Imagine our plight when, like, right from 1986 to 2000, the only one victory was in Sri Lanka in 1993. So the overseas test win was a, like, it was a myth that we were kind of brought up on, that yeah, it's never going to happen.
yeah.
So
My dad.
let's yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
as I say, yeah, my dad used to say there were like times when India would draw a test match and that would lead to like schools getting half day and stuff like that back in the like the late 60s and 70s. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Even at home, a draw was considered a win essentially.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think there have been periods of Indian cricket, and I mean, in all honesty, the first like 40 years or 45 years have been pretty mediocre. And, there was only the odd victory every now and then. Of course, Tiger Pataudi was a great captain, but even he, if you look through his records, there were very limited wins, and particularly overseas.
Yeah.
Things did change a bit with Ajit Wadekar coming in, but that was a very sort of brief period, maybe only 2 years or 3 years when, India won something. And then, yeah, you had to wait again for Kapil Dev to come in to start winning again abroad on a regular basis. And then, yes, I mean, he has his critics, but Ganguly did do a lot for India winning overseas, and that's been carried forward by particularly by Virat Kohli, who I think has probably been one of the best Indian captains in recent years.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it was about the time when obviously the Indian talent pool also really matured in the
Hmm.
I think 2010s. We had like a huge talent pool to pick from, and uh, even though the captaincy from Kohli was obviously top notch in Test matches, he also had a very good team at his disposal as well at the time. Uh, so all those sort of combined to create a very strong Indian setup, which is I think is surely I think in our Test history the best uh, testing ever for Indian cricket, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, the numbers speak for themselves. The record speaks for itself. It's just a shame that they've probably not won enough series abroad. I mean,
Yeah.
they could have won in England. They could have won in South Africa as well. Of course, there were two great victories in Australia, which are worth their weight in gold. But yeah, I
Mhm.
mean that's the nature of sport. That you will have some days when things don't go your way. Coming to the ongoing test series, I would agree with a lot of people saying that India ideally should have been 3-0 up because they held the ascendancy in many of the days, and just those little minor errors which they've come up with. So my belief is that India can still win this 3-2, but it's going to be difficult. Of course, the Manchester test I think is the more difficult of the two test matches to win for India. Your thoughts, like, how do you see the rest of the two games panning out?
I think yeah, it's a very young side, so there's always this danger of inconsistency because I mean there are days when India is really on top, and then there are days when the same group of players are struggling. So yeah, definitely, I think if they can play to their potential, I think India could come back and sort of win the last two and uh, get the 3-2 result. But like just going by how the things have gone, for example, I think even over the last 3-4 years, I think it has been a team on in transition because there was a phase when Rahane and Pujara they got phased out. Then there was a phase where Kohli and Rohit now they have kind of gone away from Test cricket, and in their like latter stages, their performances were also a little bit inconsistent in Test cricket. So Indian cricket had some really epic Test wins during this period, but then there were like some very ordinary performances as well. So that is something that will eventually improve as this young transition period sort of ends and this young team matures. Uh, for this particular series, I think it's it would be sort of a test of their metal and would be a good learning curve. Uh, I'm not very confident that they might win both the both the matches in a row, but they
Hmm.
certainly have the potential to do that. So it's very difficult to call, I guess. But yeah, I hope
Yeah,
they.
you've got to give that sort of leeway to a captain, and it's not easy to make your captaincy debut in an away series in England. It's a bit reminiscent of how Sachin got his captaincy going with a lot of like really challenging series,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean it's obviously quite difficult, especially in this current like WTC scenario. So just some like final thoughts. One thing which I'm sure you'll agree on is more stories from Indian sources. I'll tell you in fact a very interesting story which I just recently heard, and I mean it's not so much relevant to Indian cricket per se, but a good story which then got confirmed when I was reading about it in another book, like completely unrelated. So I was just doing one state Premier League where Sabah Karim was one of my co-commentators and Vivek Razdan was there as well. So we were just sitting in a waiting lounge. There was a rain delay, so we were waiting and chatting. So what I like to do is obviously I work with a lot of cricketers. I like to chat cricket with them. I like some very standard questions, like I might ask them who was the best like bowler you faced, or who was the best batter that you bowled to, and then I'll ask both like Indian and international. So there's some very interesting answers, like Sabah Karim obviously reckons that Nayan Mungia was probably the best Indian wicket keeper, and he also extends it sometimes to globally. That among the keepers that he played against, probably Mungia was the best. Even Mark Richardson was very good in terms of the ones that he saw. Sorry, David Richardson, obviously. But I think the story that he was talking, I asked him about Viv Richards. So he told a story from the '89 tour. And he says that there was a match on at Sabina Park, and Richards just got a bad, what he felt was a bad decision, and he walked off, sort of mumbling to himself, cursing, and visibly angry with the decision. And he went off, and obviously back then the sort of dressing rooms, very similar to how it is in Eden Gardens, the dressing rooms are out in the open and they're like right next to each other, very close to each other. So he said that a little while later, Richard's just come, like he's taken off his shirt, so he's just got a sort of towel around his top, and he's just wearing his track bottoms, and he's still sitting and he's still fuming, and and in the meantime, the stands have gone crazy. So Sabina Park, like anyway, a very emotive place about cricket. And what they do is, like, they just start going crazy and start throwing things, pelting things, and this that mini riot, like, beginning to come out. And then Richards is just watching all of this. Then the organizers come to him and tell him that, please go and pacify all the people. So initially he's not bothered. He just says that, whatever, get lost or something. Then finally a few more people come. So then he says, okay, I'll go. And he goes in that same state, like he just has that towel around his neck, and he goes, stands in the middle of the ground, and he just raises his right hand, and everybody quietens down. And interestingly, some months back, I had also bought Richards' autobiography. So after this project got over, I came back to Bangalore. I was reading this book, and he actually writes about this incident in terms of, like, crowds going out of control. And he mentions one of the knocks from this series, about which I will make a video, which he describes as his favorite knock. So it's quite interesting how cricketers, like, have these little stories, and it's always such a pleasure to sit around them, hear these stories, hear legendary stories. Last year at the UPCA, the league, there was a lot of chat about Yogaraj Singh, because a lot of the cricketers there had been his wards, and they were telling hilarious stories about Yogaraj Singh, who was known to be a little sort of, like, over the top, and in his coaching style. So that's what I would, obviously encourage you to do, to find as many stories from Indian cricket perspective possible. So what are the plans that you have for your site? Like, where do you see it going further? What else do you want to do? Do you want to start, podcasts? Because you mentioned that you were a little conscious, but you've done just fine. You've spoken absolutely perfectly here.
Yeah, yeah. I think a podcast is probably the next step for this this platform. Obviously, writing and text-based content will remain one of the main features of this, because that kinds of adds to this the niche factor of this of the page, because not a lot of accounts actually do a lot of writing uh, based storytelling. And what I realized here on through my like audience demographic, most of them are actually above the age of 30, and they do still enjoy a little bit of traditional reading, which they probably don't get in other cricket content platform. So,
Hmm.
so that will remain one of the core channels for the storytelling. But I understand
Hmm.
obviously that video and podcasting is important for getting these stories out to even a larger audience beyond this niche group of passionate fans. So that is there in my mind, and there I've been in sort of in talks to sort of start certain few shows, storytelling shows, where I could uh, have a conversation like this, where like we are having a casual conversation and stories coming out very informally. And I think that is something I'm sure my followers on the page would love to follow. So yeah, and I also, because of this page, I have had the chance to sort of talk to a few cricketers, because I've never like properly worked in mainstream journalism. I never really had access to them, but because of this page, because a lot of people are following me now, so I can have been able to reach out to few of them, get some of those stories which are through like primary research rather than secondary through books and stuff. So would love to bring out some of those uh, primary research based anecdotes as well, be it form of writing or in form of podcast. So that is another step that I kind of hope to do. And basically, overall, I feel the goal of it is to sort of preserve the rich legacy of cricket that is there, and sort of archive all this story in a platform which is a lot more modern and a lot more accessible for the younger generation.
Yeah, that's very good, and I mean, I'm sure I'll wish you all the best for that. Just one final thought, like, is it very challenging balancing all of this, your regular job, your personal life, and this as a sort of side hustle which you're doing just purely out of your passion?
Yes, I mean, in terms of right now, my the biggest issue that I have, that I'm always very sleep deprived. So I'm always like working late into the night, like 2, 3 a.m. in the night, and then waking up in the morning to do my regular job. So yeah, it's a bit of challenge. Then there's always, because I'm in the US, there's always this challenge of how much I can do in content creation, because there's obviously some immigration rules that I have to abide by to sort of uh, not sort of always keep it passion based and not monetize any of these content. So I have to be very very careful with that. So these are some of the finer things that I have to sort of deal with on a daily basis. But yeah, at the end of it all, when I get a lot of like good feedback on the page and stuff like that, when I get the opportunity to talk to different people, these sort of make up for it, and it motivates me to, even if I sleep a little less, it motivates me to like go out. Uh, as of now, it is not impacting anything on my health, but hopefully it does not touch wood. But yeah, hope to
Yeah,
like,
that's very good. Yeah,
yeah,
keep the passion going. Play a bit more, maybe that'll help.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah,
probably so.
absolutely. Wishing you all the best, not just for the Forgotten Cricket Memories page, but also generally in life. Do well, take opportunities that come along, and maybe see you maybe on some bigger platforms in time to come. And thanks for sparing time for this chat. I know this is quite late at night for you, so
No.
I'll let you get back to sleep for now. And thanks so much. And maybe somewhere down the line we can have a chat once again and chat about some
Yeah,
other cricket memories as well. It's been a
yeah,
pleasure. Thanks,
yeah,
Devjit.
it's been a pleasure as well. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.